Is Canopy Conversations, talking to your neighbors about trees. Nice to see some of you returned and nice to see some familiar faces and some new people as well. My name is Meg Morgan. I am the Root Nashville campaign manager at the Cumberland River Compact. Friendly reminder to please mute yourself when you're on the Zoom call, but please unmute yourself so that you can chime into the participation, and I will mute you if needed. So today is talking to your neighbors about trees. Next session, we were chatting about this a little bit earlier, is about what makes a good planting site. So we'll be talking about street trees versus yard trees versus public property. What are all the differences there? How far apart should you plant trees from your house? What kind of soil do you need to look at, and versus what kind of soil your tree is interested in potentially? All these kinds of things so that you can get right tree, right place. And then in September, we will be talking about more of the maintenance and long-term tips and tricks for living with your trees into the long run. Today, we're going to start with a short presentation, kind of like last time, that's about the talking points for tree conversations with your neighbors or recruiting your neighbors for trees. I'm going to present some research that we found through the Root Nashville campaign. We'll wait to do the introductions until after that, because then we'll go around and we'll kind of hear a little bit from you about what neighborhood you're coming from, where you live, and then your reactions to kind of this information that was presented, and just kind of your first thoughts about that. So just a heads up that that is coming after the short presentation. And then we will maybe have a full group discussion, or we might break out into smaller groups to kind of talk about what you think are the main motivators for planting trees in your neighborhood. What do you think your neighbors like or dislike about trees, and what barriers do we need to overcome to get more trees planted in our neighborhoods? So just a quick context here about the Root Nashville campaign. I know some of you are quite familiar already with Root Nashville and can maybe give this spiel next time on your own, but just to provide us with some context here, what is Root Nashville? We're a citywide tree planting campaign with the goal of planting 500,000 trees in Nashville in Davidson County by 2050. So this number is large and ambitious, but it's because we're losing so many trees, and it is a number that was determined looking at what does it take to be a healthy tree canopy, because we need that to have a healthy population, versus how much green space is actually available. So how many trees do we need to be healthy, and how much room is there in Nashville? The campaign is led by the Cumberland River Compact, which is a nonprofit, and Metro Nashville. So this is an initiative of the city. I work at the Cumberland River Compact as kind of the day-to-day operations of the campaign. We're planting so many, not just because, trees are beautiful and we love them, but because we are losing trees as a city. We're losing about 9,000 every year to development and growth. It might even be a little bit more than that. We're going to lose about 1.5 million to the emerald ash borer. That is unfortunately going to destroy our native ash trees. We also have laurel wilt that is going to take out our sassafras, it's a tongue twister, trees. And our tree canopy is aging, so they're just getting older. So because of this fact that Nashville is losing trees, that is why the Root Nashville campaign exists, to help restore our canopy and what was lost. We're planting all over Davidson County, but we do focus efforts in these impact areas of Madison, North Nashville, and South Nashville. And that is to create a more equitable distribution of trees. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but very recently, within the past few weeks, and I will send these slides and links out afterwards to all of you, but trees have been in the news, kind of related to our impact areas. This article that just came out recently on the right, talking about where trees are located in cities. This is absolutely the case for Nashville as well, unfortunately, that the wealthier and the more white a neighborhood is, the greener and the more trees are in that neighborhood. So that is why we have those impact areas. I'll send you the links to both of these because they were hot off the presses. So trees have been in the news if you want to dive into these things a little bit more about why they're so important. So jumping into today's topic, so we're going to be talking about, why exactly people like trees, what do they say about trees, what might be some of the barriers to trees. So I first want to show y'all the results of this research that we conducted through the Root Nashville campaign with people who recently received free trees from the Root Nashville campaign. So we did this big online survey, and we also did some phone interviews with a random selection of people about why they accepted trees. And then we also did some research about the barriers and what people responded as those barriers. So this is what we have found out so far. Let's start with the motivations. We'll start with the good stuff. Why do people like trees? What did they say? Why did they say yes? We received information from 9 different zip codes across Nashville. Many were from Donaldson and East Nashville, which were the areas that were hit so hard by the tornado and where we did a lot of replanting efforts. So that makes sense. The survey itself was super short for the most part because we really wanted to make sure that people didn't get lost or distracted. And we got a little over 350 responses. So we were really pleased with the response rate from that. So the very first question we asked people was, what was your number one main reason, your main motivator, why you accepted a free tree? Why did you say yes? What exactly do you like about trees? If you had to pick one top reason. And you can see it's kind of this dark green kind of pie slice over here for the top reason that was cited was that trees provide beauty. About 30% of the people said that. Coming in pretty close at second and third place here were trees keep people healthy. So a lot of that had to do with heat and shade that trees provide. But then this third one was trees help the environment at 20%. So that was more related to flooding or wildlife, air quality, that kind of thing, even though that is also related to our own health, of course, as people. So there's a variety of other answers in here as well that you can see. You know, they said yes because the trees were free. That was their main motivator. Nothing wrong with that. Still got trees planted as far as we're concerned. A pretty good percentage of people cited that it was really their past and their growing up that brought them to wanting a tree. They grew up loving the outdoors and nature. And we did say, you know, in the question itself, if you are replanting, tell us why you're replanting. We're trying to kind of tell people, if you lost a tree, tell us why you want to replant it. But I think it was just so, loss is really, you know, turns out a main motivator for people. And that was still, you know, even though we said in the question, if you lost it, tell us why you want it, people still said, well, I lost a tree and I wanted to replace it. So that shows us that that was really an important factor for people. Couple other kind of random responses, and some of the others at the end here were more to do with the economic value. Not as many said that that was their main motivator anyway. So this was the kind of bulk of the research and what we found out. So those top 3 reasons pretty evenly reported, even though that trees provide beauty reason was number 1. These top 3 were all pretty even. So why did you want a tree? They provide beauty. They keep people healthy with this cleaner air, the cooler temperatures and shade. And number 3, trees help the environment. But really overall, like this is kind of our takeaway, because these were fairly evenly reported, we can kind of take away that people love trees for a variety of reasons. And it might be a different benefit that really speaks to someone and makes them really excited about planting more trees or planting a tree in their yard. So kind of some interesting kind of points that jumped out to us in doing this research and in doing these interviews. Nobody mentioned climate change as a main motivator. So I don't know if maybe that's as well known yet as this is a way to combat climate change, is planting trees. So maybe that's something to talk to more people about. Maybe that's just not something that resonates just yet. Biodiversity was mentioned multiple times as a reason why people wanted to plant trees. So biodiversity, kind of like how it sounds, the bio as life and diversity, right? That means kind of the variety of species across the whole kind of different levels of ecosystem that are represented. So that was something that was mentioned that people were interested in. And to tell you the truth, trees provide beauty, you know, was the number 1 reason. But I actually went into this thinking that that was going to be significantly higher as a motivator or as a reason. So it was interesting. It's still number 1, but the reasons really did kind of vary. We also asked, this was a survey to people who received free trees, from the campaign, specifically through the Neighborhood Planting Captain program. So they were free, and we did ask, would you have paid for one on your own? Or, did it help that these were free? And an extremely high number of participants would not have paid for a tree on their own, was something that came out of this study. So that was kind of interesting for us to think about as well. We also asked how people heard about these free trees, and I know we have some past and present neighborhood planting captains on this call right now, so you might be particularly interested in this, but the majority heard about this opportunity directly from their captain, kind of in person, as door-to-door, or through personal outreach. So that's something that was really interesting to us, is that more tree recipients heard about this opportunity for free trees through these more personal, direct methods than something digital. And that was a surprise to me anyway, that, yes, the social media and email and, all these other things next door was helpful. And about 40% first heard about the opportunity through that way, but it was really that personal touch that did the trick. So those are kind of the motivators. Those are the reasons, what we heard from Nashville natives, or Nashville residents, some natives, about why they love trees. But let's get into the other side here, some of the barriers, what people said they made them hesitate about planting trees. So this shows a survey that we did with our neighborhood planting captains, who are volunteer leaders who work to recruit their neighbors for trees. We asked them, this group of people, the captains, when you were out there talking to your neighbors, when you were going door to door, what did you hear about the barriers? Like, why did people say no? What were the main barriers? And the top one was, people said, I'm happy with the trees that I've already got. I don't need any more. It's kind of the first response back. Second and third, kind of tied here, were, I don't want a tree to damage my home. I think especially after the tornado, and the derecho soon after, that is a pretty understandable one, that people do have that fear or concern, justifiably, in some cases, that they don't want the tree to damage their home. But there are also, quite a few renters or people who were not sure that their homeowners association would approve of planting trees, or just weren't interested, or this wasn't a good time for them to be planting trees. But really, these top reasons were, I don't need any more. I've already got some, or not wanting a tree to damage your home potentially in a storm or other factor. So we also gathered information about the barriers or hesitations through a pilot in a neighborhood in Madison. We sent mailers to this neighborhood that said, hey, you've been selected for free trees. Here's where you go to sign up. Here's the 5 species that are available. We'll deliver it right to your house. We'll plant it for you. We sent these mailers, and then we followed up to those same houses with door-to-door canvassing and saying, hey, did you get this in the mail? Did you sign up? Would you like a tree? This is just a sample of what parts of the neighborhood look like. So there are definitely some trees, but definitely a lot of room for more. So that's part of the reason why it was selected. And we've got to say, our biggest, lesson learned from that experience was that it really helps to have a local neighbor to conduct the outreach. That's maybe even more important than we first thought. The mailers on their own really did not work out very well. We did not get a high response rate from those mailers. The follow-up canvassing is what helped get some trees claimed or reserved, but on their own, we found that it really wasn't effective, and that it really helps to have somebody who's actually in the neighborhood kind of speak on more of a peer-to-peer level with their own neighbors. From the canvassing and the mailers and going door to door, these were the reasons that were cited why people did not want trees. Again, that first reason kind of bubbled up to the top. I'm happy with the trees I've got. I don't think I need any more. Issues of maintenance were kind of cited as this second top barrier. I don't want to break the leaves. I'm not interested in, messing with these falling fruit or these limbs. I don't want to water it. So the maintenance was kind of another top barrier. And then in this particular neighborhood, we really found that it would help to have someone who is bilingual, or someone who, or materials that were also translated into Spanish. So that's something that we've implemented right away in the campaign. We now have our materials in Spanish as well. I unfortunately do not speak Spanish. I would hope to learn at least a little bit. I need to learn to say, would you like a free tree in Spanish, at least, I think. So some of these other reasons kind of cited here were just people just not interested or renting, and then again, that they didn't want the tree to damage their home. So from all of this, so from what we learned on, why people like trees, and then potentially what barriers there are, why they said, no, thank you, I'm not interested in a tree. These are some of kind of our recommendations that we are telling our volunteers that we work with, but also, neighborhood leaders who are interested in increasing the canopy in their neighborhood. We heard a lot of like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't need more trees. Like, what is this? It's kind of a first reaction or response. And we found that it was really successful to follow right up with that by like, well, Nashville's losing trees, and you can be part of that solution in your own yard. That kind of clicked for people right away. If it, we kind of were offering like, hey, would you like a free tree? They're kind of like, why? Like, what are you doing? If we follow up with that right away, that seemed to really click. I think people know, they've seen and experienced the growth in Nashville. And I think that kind of resonated with them. So that was a message that was useful and successful. For kind of these maintenance questions or hesitations, these are kind of the next two bullets. We heard a lot of like, oh, I don't have a green thumb, I can't keep any plants alive, or, I'm worried about the storms or trees damaging my house. These are some messages that we share with people that we found to be pretty successful, especially that I don't have a green thumb, I can't keep things alive. We really tell people that trees are pretty resilient. You water them over the summer, generally they'll do okay if you've planted the right tree in the right place and done your little bit of homework to make sure the tree is in the proper location in your yard. If it's a full sun tree, that it's in full sun, those kind of things. Really, as long as you water it, you should be good. It is a lot easier than most houseplants, in my opinion. So with this message about, people being worried about trees potentially damaging their home or falling over, causing damage in storms, I think, of course, having empathy and understanding that is kind of the first step. With that tornado, that was, of course, very scary and potentially quite traumatic for people as well. So I think as long as we can kind of have those conversations in an empathetic way, if people are at least a little bit open to it, we also recommend planting trees in clusters whenever possible. So instead of planting one tree kind of all by itself in the middle of the yard, maybe if you plant two trees kind of close to each other, or even three kind of in a cluster, they will strengthen each other because their roots will intertwine under the ground and be less likely to fall over or cause damage. And again, it's always right tree, right place. You don't want to plant an oak that will get super, super big right next to your house, for example. If you have room, we definitely encourage you to plant those canopy trees, but you want to make sure it's just far enough away from your home. Then you don't need to worry about it as much. And then, of course, we get the messages that, oh, trees are messy, I don't want to mess with it. Or, I mow my yard in the summer, I don't also want to have to rake leaves, that kind of thing. We try to tell people that, hey, you don't have to rake those leaves. Maybe, if you have some particularly picky neighbors, maybe this is a little bit of a culture change that we can talk about with some of them, but we actually recommend leaving your leaves. You don't need to rake them up. You can leave them there because it's really important habitat over the fall and winter for little insects and creatures who kind of use that as protection and warmth. So a couple other talking points, and then I'd love to turn it more over to the group here. These are some things that we found to be kind of light bulb moments for people and talking about trees and kind of the benefits in general. Depending on your general rapport with your neighbors, you can also joke around with them a little bit. We found it to be pretty successful when people be like, oh, I don't need any more trees, or like, oh, I'm not interested in trees. You can kind of say, well, like, don't you like clean air? Don't you like clean water to drink? Like this is something that, trees can really help with and provide for you. And sometimes that will kind of keep the conversation going instead of having a dead end there. A kind of factoid that is helpful to use with people as well is that our drinking water does come from the Cumberland River. So anything we can do to kind of keep our waterways healthy and strong, it's going to be our health in the end. And trees can really reduce the stormwater runoff that's going into our waterways and filtering that water as it goes into our waterways as well. Another kind of interesting or side benefit of trees is that they calm traffic. So we know in Nashville, I've attended lots and lots of different neighborhood meetings, and what seems to come up in so many of them is people driving too fast in these neighborhoods. And that's a very worthwhile concern and something that we need to be thinking about and coming up with creative solutions to overcome. And trees can really do that, especially trees that are planted, more in the right of way or closer to the road. They kind of create a natural tunnel that causes people to naturally drive slower. So maybe somebody, isn't quite sure about planting trees, but is really passionate about lowering speeds in their neighborhood. Maybe they'll plant a tree for this reason. Kind of another side benefit that works with people sometimes is that trees increase property value, and they only grow in value the bigger the tree grows. This is like the opposite of driving your car off the sales parking lot, right? How it depreciates immediately. Trees appreciate immediately and appreciate in value only more in time as they grow and get bigger. And then kind of lastly here, with temperatures rising, trees can really keep things cooler, and they can also sequester carbon. With our, kind of changing climate, something that we're expected to see here in our region is increased temperatures, but also more extreme rainfall events, more flooding, unfortunately, more heavy rainfall in shorter condensed time periods. And this is something that trees can really, really help with by soaking up all that water and keeping us cool and protecting us in the long run from some of these weather events. So that's me talking a whole lot at you, and we are going to turn it over more now to the group. So would really love to hear from you all, if you wouldn't mind kind of saying your name and your neighborhood, maybe what part of town your neighborhood is located as well. And then would love to kind of hear some of your general reactions to some of this information. Were there surprises? Were there parts that's been your experience as well? Or any part of this that kind of resonated with you. So I am going to stop sharing my screen here so I can see all of you lovely people more closely. And if you don't mind, I will probably just go ahead and call on people to go next. So name, neighborhood, what part of town, and then your general reactions. Sue, would you like to go first for us?
Hi, excuse me, I'm Sue Goodman. I live down in the bottom of Antioch, Davidson County, where it meets Williamson County, and we have a huge amount of development. Every day, forests are being wiped out, thousands and thousands of trees every day being removed. But when I talk to people about planting trees, their number one issue is that I don't want to ruin my view. Strange.
That's interesting. View of the street? Are you all
just
high
view
ground?
Yeah,
just view
we've
in
got
general.
A lot of hills.
Okay.
And so they say, when I say, oh, here's this barren hilltop that could really use some trees, and my neighbors go, yeah, and we like it that way, and we want you to mow this and not turn it into a meadow, and we don't want trees here because we want to be able to see the sunset.
Interesting. That is not one that I have heard before. That's interesting that is kind of what's going on. It must have something to do with the topography in your part of town. Let's keep thinking on that. Or if anyone else has advice or ideas about how Sue might overcome this in her neighborhood. I mean, of course, my initial reaction is trees make beautiful views, and seeing a tree out a window, isn't that a nice view in itself? Yeah. I'm work from home right now, and I have two giant sugar maples out my window that I just get to look right at all day, and I feel pretty good about that view. So that's interesting, Sue. Thank you for sharing that. Greg, would you like to say hello next?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm in Southeast Nashville, and I'm the commissioner for this district for the Beautification Commission. So I've talking to my neighbors, and one, I want to underscore one of the points you made about so much more effective communicating person to person than any kind of literature or outreach. Um, I think primarily probably because it's like kind of a trusted source, you know, and the guards are down, and it's like, okay, someone's not selling me something or trying to convince me of something. It's, hey, it's my neighbor Greg, and he mentioned this. So one of your pictures in your presentation really rang true, which was the couple of houses that there was nothing around. It's just the house and this, you know, battering sun. Excuse me, sorry. I have several streets like that. And I just look at some of these houses. I'm like, how do you guys handle that? It's also like lack of character. It just seems out of place. You know, it's just a house on a plot of land. Nice house, but it's just screams that it's missing that. Um, I think, in my experience, the difficulty or the challenge is they want to know what kind of tree, you know, and they love the idea that it's free. They, you know, it's great that someone else will plant it, but will they like it? Like you're saying, the number one reason is beauty. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people love magnolia trees, other people wouldn't. So that was the, you know, that's my big, not concern, question here. And because I can get a lot of people interested, but that's going to be the first thing is well, what kind of tree?
That's really interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We did also ask on this survey, how did you pick what species you ended up picking? And I didn't even kind of include it, you know, in this presentation because it was like every answer was equally represented. So I was like, this is either helpful or not helpful, you know, I'm not sure which way, but, you know, some people pick it because of size, but it's because they want something smaller, you know, more understory. So they'll go for a red bud, or the opposite, you know, they want something that will grow, you know, really large, like an oak. Or flowers was a main, you know, something else that was cited as a reason. Diversity of trees compared to what else is in the neighborhood. You know, they wanted to plant something different than what was already there.
Yep.
So yeah, it seemed to us anyway, in talking to people, that they just pick their different trees for just so many, you know, different various
Different reasons and the color. Questions on that then. So because I'm sorry, I'm still learning about this, and I'm sure this is out there and info's out there somewhere. So the residents can receive these trees for free. That's correct.
Through this particular program, through the Root Nashville campaign, we need someone kind of applies to become a neighborhood planting captain, and then if accepted into the program, they get a certain number of free trees, and then they go recruit their neighbors for those trees.
Okay, that's great. And so it sounds like you do have a resource for them to go to look through and choose. Okay, good, perfect. Then on kind of a side note related, I don't know that this is in the city's jurisdiction, it might be state, but you know, the major power lines that will run through, and so it'll be miles of chopped down lawn or whatever.
Right.
So it's just major root. I understand they need to keep it clear and open for safety reasons, maintenance reasons. But those power lines are so high, really high. A tree would never reach that. And I look at that whole strip as just like a blank, you know, man, a canopy, just adding some trees to the whole point of like cleans the air, you know, it'll break up a little bit of the visual. I just feel like there's so much land there, but I know it's probably a no because it's not our jurisdiction and they want to have that area completely clear, which I get, but just a thought that there's so much open space there.
So are you kind of specifically referring to, you know, those major thoroughfares that are often, they'll be like through wooded areas sometimes, where there's those really high power lines, but then like nothing underneath?
Yes. Right. Not the street power lines, the major grid power lines.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would definitely be something to look into, especially because I know what you're talking about. They are so high, you know. I wonder if we could get something smaller, you know, like a dogwood or something like that in that area.
And if it's something like, I know bushes and flowers wouldn't, you know, for the lawn care, but like a tree, the lawn mower guys will just, you know, treat it like the post of the power line, just mow around it.
Right. Right. If we put a weed whacker kind of protection on the base too,
Yeah.
that's more likely to. Okay, let's keep talking about that, Greg. I'm going to make a note. I like the way you're thinking. We're always looking for good potential ideas and places to go. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, Marnie. Welcome back.
Well, I wanted to respond to years ago, I worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and our jurisdiction included Center Hill Lake. And our office actually prosecuted people who cut down trees to improve their view, because some of the trees were owned by the federal government, and they were just, topping trees, and it was terrible and pretty selfish, because they might improve their view, but they were wrecking someone else's view across the lake. So we're talking late 70s, early 80s that I'm sure is still going on. One of the feedback on your presentation, I had no idea about planting trees in clusters. I thought that was really interesting. And also the idea that you really don't have to water a tree after 2 or 3 years, which prompted me to think, do you guys have a facts page where, like, my dogwood leaves are drooping in July, is that normal, or do I need to water it? So that's a thought. Thinking about, I live near the Richmead condominiums on Bowling. We used to live there. We moved down the street. And I think it can be hard for an HOA to reach consensus on stuff. And they can also feel like we've got enough problems to deal with. Let's not worry about trees. But to me, the pitch is, well, there are a lot of, all the aspects that you talked about, including property value. And if you have an appropriate reserve in an HOA, so that you're not just worrying about replacing the swimming pool, but also replacing trees, that could be a pitch made to HOAs. And that's about it for me. Thanks for doing this.
I love that. So yeah, so are you in an HOA right now, Marnie? You're near.
Yes, it's like cluster homes. There are about 12, and I'm actually thinking of, I told the president of the HOA that I was going to attend the webinar and let him know if it was worth looking into. And I thought maybe I could start just with our HOA and then move beyond in the neighborhood. And I did contact a friend who lives at Richmead, but she's too busy to be involved. So maybe just start small with 12 owners and go beyond that.
Mm-hmm. So you're already thinking about it. I love to hear that. So that's great, Marnie. And I will say we have had, through our particular program with the neighborhood planting captains, we have had some from HOAs. We are going to have to make sure we go through the extra steps of, okay, are you allowed to plant wherever you want? Some HOAs have different landscaping rules. Is this approved by the board? That kind of thing. But we have had HOA board members who themselves were like, no, we need to do this. And having that advocate is what made it happen. So sounds like you could potentially be that person / already are.
Yeah, there can be vigilantes. I remember at a different condo that I lived in, vigilantes dug up someone's tulips. Just a few tulips, but it didn't comply. Kind of sad.
It is. I know. That's why we got to make sure we got to get permission on the front end for sure, and the buy-in. So we do have coming up pretty soon, depending on where the rest of our participants here are living and where they come from, but we're very fortunate to have on the Metro Tree Advisory Committee, which is a kind of cross-sector committee with Metro and other tree groups, that there is a participant from the Gertner and Company who is that one of the management properties that has many sites all over Nashville. We have a representative on the Metro Tree Advisory Committee from Gertner who is a huge tree advocate. She's very passionate about biodiversity, does a lot of volunteering, and is just really interested in this. So we do have, an advocate at the top. So if you're in a Gertner property, that really helps. Okay. I'll throw that out there, but at least there's some. So yeah, sometimes having that champion can help move those projects along. So yeah, great. Thanks, Marnie. Hans?
I have to unmute myself. Okay. I live in Westmead. We have a lot of trees here and big properties. Most minimum property size is about 1 acre, but other properties are 3 to 5 acres. Lots of trees. We have tree loss, certainly. We talked last time about many houses, new buildings, bigger buildings. Trees have been taken out. We lose trees to lots of rain. 2 of my neighbors lost at least 3 trees which just fell down. And we had taken our 2 trees which grew on a slope and leaned towards our house, and we just had to cut them down. But we invested about $4,000 in planting trees when we came here. We bought them all from Grow Wild in Fairview and got great advice how to do that. Now, even though we have lots of trees here, we have properties which have just big lawns and very few trees. And we are working now on an idea with our city councilor, Tom Druffel, to go from house to house and ask neighbors who have basically no tree in front of their houses, or only one, to encourage them to plant more trees. So a big kind of initiative which will help maybe to make Westmead having most trees in Nashville. We are working on another initiative, and I just come from a discussion with the principal of the Westmead Elementary School. The idea is to get tree samplings or saplings, the small ones, and grow them in pots for 2 or 3 years, and then offer them to neighbors, and then go from house to house and do that. This initiative is just taking off in the moment. So there are some ideas around how to increase the tree density here in Westmead, even it's already high. Yeah, that's what I can say now. What I would like to add is what I think is really important to plant trees along streets. My hometown is Munich in Germany, and whenever a larger street is renovated or so, they plant hundreds of trees along that street. And it's amazing how much difference it makes. And people love it. And trees also separate the main street from pedestrian walks and bicycle lanes. So you have basically trees all over, and the cars cannot park on a bicycle path or on a pedestrian walk because they are separated. You have trees in between. And I think we should Nashville should really work at that. Planting trees along streets. So that's probably what I have to say here.
I love that. So you're already working on these issues as well. For that first initiative you talked about, Hans, that kind of going door to door and approaching people. Is that going to be kind of leading up to the fall kind of planting season when we start getting trees in the ground? Do y'all have a timeline, or is it just kind of in idea phase now?
Yeah. Well, every idea has to be set into reality until you get all the people together and agree on a certain strategy. It always takes time. So what I told you are just now more or less ideas, and we talk with each other, and I think it should go in effect next year.
I love that. I love that. Fingers crossed. Yeah. If there's anything we can do to help or, kind of participate in that, I'd also just love to know what you hear and how that goes. Maybe you can be a guest speaker at one of these in the future.
The idea is actually to get tree saplings for free and then plant them and let them grow. And I'm already in discussion with you guys, with some other guys, with Nashville Tree Foundation and so on. And if we get hundreds of these saplings, and grown for 2 years, we can just distribute them. And I think people are pretty receptive here. What concerns trees.
Good. Thank you for your efforts.
And something what we really should talk about is what kind of trees. Mm-hmm. And I remember you remind you about this book from Doug Talami about oaks. Mm-hmm. That oaks are the most valuable trees. They grow really large. Exactly. So we should, very often trees are offered which do not grow very well in certain areas, but oaks should be really pushed. The idea to plant oaks. And
definitely with you on that. So this book,
oaks and so, but they all become big trees. So you have to know where you plant it.
Right. If you have the room, and if you have the space, definitely recommend oaks. I'll send the link afterwards to this book that we are referring to now. This is The Nature of Oaks by Doug Talami. He's also written a couple other books about mostly the importance of planting native species and how you can become part of, the solution to environmental problems just in your own yard and what you use in your own yard. So thanks for bringing that up, Hans. And yeah, please keep us posted about how some of these initiatives go, and I know we'll keep talking about it. And yeah, your comment about street trees, I also did just kind of want to say to everyone as well, that there are funds available that neighborhood groups can apply for to plant these street trees. I mentioned it a little bit in the kind of first session a couple of weeks ago, but this is the Metro Tree Bank, and I will make a note to send this to you all as well. So what you do, there's these funds that are available when developers cannot meet the tree requirement that they are required to on their property. They pay into this tree bank fund, and neighborhood groups can apply to plant some trees through that fund in their neighborhood. So yeah, I'll make sure you have the information for that as well, because yeah, there's so many, trees have so many different benefits, but street trees in particular are pretty special in terms of character and water quality and stormwater runoff and all of these things.
First slide you showed for these two streets, you showed
the picture of like what it looks like with and without. Yeah, it makes a big difference. Absolutely. Thank you, Hans. Yeah. Melissa, nice to have you here. Melissa is a past planting captain. Would you like to say kind of hello and where you live and maybe a little bit about your past experience? I think it's the Melissa I know. I hope it's not it could be a different Melissa, I suppose.
Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay. Yes, I am. I was a captain over in North Nashville and gave away some trees over in the tornado area, over in the DB Tide, Knowles area, over last summer and fall. And so it was a lot of grunt work, a lot of face-to-face. So definitely know that the giving out flyers hand to hand, handing them out to people and talking to people, and face-to-face does make a big difference. Definitely, I never did any media or not that. I just did face-to-face and did a lot of grunt work, and that does make a difference. That's what worked for me. But I live over in Hermitage, and my area where I live was affected by the tornado. So, and I'm going to be doing tree capping over here this year. Hopefully we're going to work on HOA issue over here soon. But I'm going to be giving trees away over here this fall, and we need a lot of trees over here. There's a lot of tree damage. I went and volunteered working on a few neighborhoods the last month. There's lots of neighborhoods still over here that are still just devastated by the tornado. Neighborhoods and neighborhoods and neighborhoods. They're just still, devastated by tornadoes. So there's lots of trees need to be replanted. It's really still sad, just still very sad. So there still needs a lot of trees.
Yeah, definitely. I know. We'll have to definitely think about it as the long game, right, Melissa? And that, we got a lot done in that first planting season after those storms. But thankfully, there's always another planting season around the corner.
Oh yeah, there's always there's lots of need, definitely, but it's still an interesting area of town. So
would you mind sharing a little bit with everybody, Melissa, since you did so much kind of canvassing in the door-to-door kind of, what the positive reactions were, maybe like what people were excited about, but then also like why people might have said no?
The North Nashville area was really interesting in the fact that a lot of the people were real hesitant because they were scared, in the fact that many of the homeowners had lived there for, most of their life, 50 years, 70 years. And the fact that they didn't want the trees, many of the people had probably had the tree since they built the house. And so a lot of people had trees, and they were, they had 15, 20 trees on a very small plot of land. And when they had trees hit their house, they had 7, 8, 9 trees hit on top of their house. And so they had a lot of devastation to their house. So they didn't want trees. A lot of people there was no question. They were, oh no, I don't want trees. Close the door real quickly. And then there were other people that were, yeah, I want a tree. There was no question. They wanted to replace their trees. And so they were very eager to get trees. But there was a very big difference in, but the big problem in that area is that there was a lot of people that still had a lot of damage to their yard. Like they still had the roots, and they still had so they're not able to they can't replace the trees because they still have, maybe when they did did do something after the tornado, they just took the tree. They didn't take the roots. So they just took, the top of the tree off and carted it off. And so they can't replace the trees, even if they wanted to replace the trees. There's no way for them to replace them. So some of the community members maybe wanted to replace trees, but they can't replace trees. But there's a lot of hesitation, misunderstanding about trees, period. So a lot of it was, okay, well, the trees you had were not trees that were compatible to being sturdy for the, we're not trees that were, these are trees that are going to be good for your community, that are going to be good trees. So a lot of it was helping them understand And I think the way that the materials we had that we got from your program really helped. I mean, I had them professionally put in binders that I got from Office Max. So, I mean, I had it really professionally done so that they had their own to look through when I was there, laminated so they could look through it because of COVID. So it was like, so I think that I think that they felt better about it. And they got to, I highlighted parts of it so they could see information about it. So the information was easy to read, easy to understand. I think it was a lot of it was educating them. And I gave them a sheet that highlighted a lot of information, and, a lot of it was educating. And so, and then the ones that were interested, I would come back to them, and I would put a sheet on their door, and I would follow, ones that were interested, I'd follow back with them. I'd send them an email, or I'd call them back, give me a call back if you're interested. So a lot of it was back and forth calling and stuff. And I still have ones that I still have that might be interested in the future and stuff. So, but a lot of it is just contacting them and talking to them about trees and stuff. So, yeah. It's nice.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'll also add, kind of for the benefit of the group, so they know, I think why you were also so successful is that Melissa, she doesn't live in North Nashville, but had done a ton of volunteering. I think still continues to, because she's a volunteering superstar, but after the tornado. And so she was a familiar face. And like we've been talking about, kind of a trusted source and representative. So I think that is definitely also part of what helped made that work, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we had a new person join us, Gregory. Hello, we are just saying hello, where you live, and kind of what's your sense of your neighbors about whether reasons they might like or dislike trees. So I'd love to have you come off mute and say hello if you don't mind. Gregory Friston, still there? I think I can press this fancy button that says ask to unmute. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, maybe he will join us shortly, but while we've got a few other minutes here, does anyone else kind of want to jump in as a response to anyone else's? So yeah, Marnie.
I have a question. Has there been any thought given to providing free tree inspection, trimming, and removal?
I'm writing it down because you are not the first to ask about this by any means. There is, I think, a huge need for more affordable long-term tree care solutions. Something that we have done a little bit of brainstorming about, and it is just brainstorming at the moment, but having some kind of fund for maintenance where people who, maybe if they do have a, big hackberry that needs to come down and there's no way around it, it's really close to their home, like how could we make that more affordable, that kind of thing. Because I think you're right, that's needed.
Well, and if someone can afford to pay for a tree rather than getting it for free, would they be able to make a donation to Root Nashville to a fund that would allow people to get the free inspection, et cetera? The other thought I have is a little more off the wall. Have you ever thought of partnering or collaborating with vendors of solar panels?
Tell me more.
Well, I'm just thinking, some people might think, oh, maybe, like, I actually have thought this, oh, we lost our oak tree, had to remove it a year ago. Now our entire roof, the sun is beating down all day long, morning and afternoon. Well, maybe I should get solar panels. But I want trees too, so and maybe solar panel people could be sort of good citizen supporters of trees.
That's a great idea because you're right. Sometimes too, I know in installation, trees might have to come down in order to get solar panels up. So maybe we could, approach some of those companies who, to my knowledge and experience with them anyway, are pretty eco-minded and
Yeah.
environmentally friendly. They're thinking along the same lines. Maybe there could be a replacement program where you could get a smaller tree maybe elsewhere if you need to take one down to put solar panels up. So that's a cool idea. You know any companies, Marnie?
A friend of mine, I think her husband is in the business, and I need to check. I think he does more than solar panels, but yeah, I'll find out.
Because like
Yeah,
we've talking about, those local connections help. So go ahead. Who did I interrupt? I'm sorry.
Maybe I can chip in here.
Mhm.
So the only big company which actually installs solar panels here in Nashville is Lightwave Solar. And we have now 16 solar panels on our roof, even though we have a lot of trees. And they actually have a device which can show you where on your roof the most sunlight comes over, shines over the year. You can then put solar panels on these parts of your roof. And our solar panels could create a lot more energy if we would cut down 2 more trees. But we won't do that. Okay. We have a really big black walnut tree, and that tree might come down one day. It's really big. And then we would get more. But I think you have to make a compromise and look on your roof. Where could you install solar panels? Where do you get a reasonable amount of sun? But you might actually, this idea from Marnie is great. You guys might approach Lightwave Solar with this idea. And I'm sure they would do that. No, I think they would do it. Try that.
So I have the support and the backup of this group of
Yeah.
people.
Right, exactly.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you. Thank you for chiming in with that, Hans. Well, look at this, 12:01, kind of right on the dot here. Willing to stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any other questions or comments they would like to jump in with. But if not, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this conversation. Really great to meet some new folks here and reconnect with others. Our next session, I'll send you the link for that in August. We'll have one more in September, and then we'll likely do another series. So we'll keep it coming. But Greg?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So for the residents for trees, does it have to be their front yard?
It does not.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, often that's where, to me it seems, and tell me if y'all have noticed or thought otherwise, but that's where a lot of the need is the front yard, because maybe the backyard is kind of kept up, and maybe, kind of like we were talking about visibility or seeing the street, maybe it wasn't as much of a priority to have trees there. So I do think that is where there's a lot of need and potential, especially with this kind of traffic calming idea, but it's absolutely open to backyards as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One quick thing, I just sent a note to Neighbor, which is, you've heard of them, that you would be a great subject matter for their discussions, because they contact so many neighborhoods and so many HOAs, as Marnie was saying, all over the city, that it would be a great place to have a little talk about trees.
Thank you, Sue. I really appreciate that. I love Neighbor to Neighbor. If y'all are unfamiliar, it's Neighbor and then the number 2 Neighbor, do really great work helping neighborhood associations both form and then also grow and thrive once they've formed. I've done a little bit with them already, but would love to, thank you for the plug, would love to have more. And we've also thought about maybe kind of co-presenting these kinds of sessions with their leaders in the future too. So thank you for thinking of that, Sue, and for doing that.
And the other thing is if you ever get a program to pull out the Bradford pears and plant something else, our neighborhood could use it.
There's so many. There's so many.
I'm so thankful they cut mine
idea.
down before I moved here, and I put an American plum in, and I'm hoping to promote those throughout the neighborhood. as it gets big.
I love that. Yeah. We'd love to see those Bradford pears come down too. We're with you.
These are trees. Just joking.
I know it's hard can't be a tree planting campaign and be pro Bradford pear at the same time, unfortunately, but some trees are much better and much more beneficial for the long run than others. I'll just leave it at that. Well, thanks, y'all. I will make sure you have these slides and links that we talked about today. I'll follow up with that via email. I'll also make sure that you have the recordings from the first session if you missed, anyone missed that and wants to follow up on that one, and the one from this one as well. And other than that, have a great lunch and rest of the week, and hope to connect with y'all at the next sessions as well. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. You're welcome.